It was on this day in 1993 that Chris Hani was assassinated. The former South African Communist Party leader was gunned down outside his home in Dawn Park, Boksburg. One of his killers, Clive Derby Lewis, died last year while on medical parole. To commemorate Hani's life and the role he played in the freedom of South Africa, we're now joined in studio by Solly Mapaila, who is the SACP's second Deputy General Secretary. Good to have you. Thank you very much for coming to Morning Live.
Morning, Liane, and morning to the viewers as well.
24 years since the death of Chris Hani, as we're talking about. When you look at the political situation in the country right now, what does the death mean at this point in time?
Well, it's still as painful, particularly to the family and to the Communist Party as a whole. There have been a lot of reflections. Just last week, Chris Hani's daughter was launching a book, and you could see the emotion pouring out throughout her reflections of the relationship with the father. So it's still a painful process. I think we reflect on where we would be if he was alive, if he stayed for a few more years, what kind of influence he would have on shaping the future of South Africa.
Yeah. I mean, if we have to look at the kind of leader that Chris Hani was, how would you describe him?
He was quite forthright. Man governed by principles and wholehearted self-service to the people. Selfless individual. He will not ask his comrades to do what he could not do. That is why he participated in very difficult missions of the movement, particularly in the armed struggle from the Wankens Polilo operations in Zimbabwe, back in the country, back in setting up missions to find pathways in Lesotho. So he was quite a forthright individual, courageous, but most of all, a deeply committed man of the people.
Yeah, which is something I think is important, because that's what people still remember him as, and people still respect him and celebrate him as, because it's almost like people are missing that in leadership these days. I mean, I think that's what one thing people are clinging on to, and hoping that perhaps we can relive those moments of the Chris Hani days.
Yeah, because I think in many ways he was also prophetic about a lot of things, about the simplicity of the struggle, and that's why he had so much following in the movement. For instance, his socialism was talk about very basic things for the majority of the people who were poor. For instance, he will speak to the question of having access clean running water, health facilities, schools, particularly for the poor and the working class. So with all of those simplification of the major questions of struggle, when we're busy dealing with the bigger issues, he simplified this to the ordinary people, and that's why he had so much following. He launched a program in the Communist Party called the Triple H campaign, where he was focusing on addressing housing, health, and hunger. In fact, that remains his signature campaign in the Communist Party. So the fundamentals of human needs, that's what he was concerned about. As you remember that one of his major last rallies was in Benoni, in Davidton, where he addressed the squatter camp people there to talk about the housing question. So it is those kind of things that today we still are faced with the problems of hunger, of housing, of poor health conditions for the majority of our people, as much as, for instance, government is rolling out the NHI program to try and mitigate and roll out better health facilities for the people.
Yeah, we're going to be joined in the next hour by Lindiwe Hani, who is, of course, the daughter of Chris Hani. She wrote a book detailing her life and also detailing some events that took place, and as recently as last year, and that was, of course, her meeting with her father's killers, which I think is going to be a very difficult thing to talk about, but nonetheless something we will definitely touch on. From your point of view, we obviously saw the passing of Clive Derby Lewis, the Conservative Party MP. He was on medical parole, but we never, ever really found out the truth behind the death, did we? I mean, how does that make you feel as a party? There's still so many unanswered questions.
Yeah, that's what is painful, because despite our sense of reconciliation, the family's outreach, we visited these prisoners in jail during the parole hearing with the family. They still couldn't pour out the real truth. And that's why we continue to oppose their parole hearing. as you know, the remaining one, Janus Walus, has taken this matter on, in fact, both of them before Clive Derby Lewis died, they've taken this matter on appeal. The case is taking place on the 5th of May in Bloemfontein. We'll still be going there to oppose it.
Yeah.
Because we think it's important that the truth comes out if you are to seek parole from a process of this nature. And I think that that remains a sore point for the family. You can imagine the impact that it will make if they were to speak the truth. It will make the family go on with their life over the coming years, accepting the truth, rather than worrying about the truth, speculating all the time.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to hear from the family's perspective when we're joined by Lindiwe in studio. Let's talk about the current day and the situation that's unfolding around us. And we've seen the SACP speaking out as one of the parties that is calling for President Jacob Zuma to step down. And I imagine this is having a very big effect between the SACP and the ANC. Explain to us, I mean, when the party leader of the ANC and the president of the country is somebody that the SACP is against, how does the relationship continue?
Yeah, of course, it will be uncomfortable, but something that we had to say, given the conditions wherein we feel that our revolution has been plunged into. It's not personal. It's not about any vendetta against President Zuma. It's about the fact that the manner things have gone around, the misbehavior, the abuse of his name, which over years we have been alerting him to correct this process, and he had failed to. It has reached a stage where now that conduct has been reflected as the conduct of the ANC. And we are part and parcel of the ANC. The ANC represent us in Parliament, for instance, on the ballot paper. So the conduct of the ANC, it's important for us as well. So that's why we spoke out and we said to the ANC, because we're not in alliance with President Zuma, we're in alliance with the ANC. Of course, the ANC give us President Zuma to lead, so is to be its leader, and therefore we have to relate with him in that particular respect. That is why we have called him to resign as President of the Republic, where we share a common view of the people of South Africa with regard to who we are. So it creates tensions, of course, but it's necessary at this point in time to save our revolution, to save the memory of Comrade Chris, to make sure that our revolution, that is the transformation of the lives of the people of South Africa, can go on unhindered. And we can mobilize the collective majority of our people to join us in this struggle. But at this point in time, it's impossible, almost difficult or impossible almost, to mobilize the people when they believe that the leadership is self-serving, self-centered, looking after themselves and their families, not concerned about their general well-being. So all of those things are issues that we've raised and discussed with the ANC, how the people view the state institutions, particularly state-owned enterprises, which have now turned into institutions of corruption. And they needed to drive what we call the second radical phase of our transition, which the president talks much about. But he will have nothing to use to drive that particular economy if state-owned enterprises are corrupted and stolen by corporate capturers of the state.
When we saw, at the beginning, when we saw the cabinet reshuffle, we saw our Deputy President, Solly Mapaila, speaking out. We saw Gwedi Mantashe speaking out. We saw Kasatu speaking out, the SACP. However, we saw a lot of about-turns after the National Working Committee, and suddenly they were in support of the President. Would there ever be an about-turn in the SACP?
No. There's no about 10. In fact, there was not even an about 10. I think Secretary General of the ANC reflected that on the Sunday Independent yesterday. I think that was extremely disheartening to see the leadership of the ANC coming out in that way. You can imagine the level of pain they went through to express themselves on that particular point, to the extent that they are not the real ones taking the decisions, but the decisions that are so crucial, that are at the heart of the mandate of the ANC from the people, are not taken by the ANC or its leader. They are taken somewhere and imposed on the ANC. Effectively, the president becoming the proxy of some outside forces, outside the collective of the ANC. That's the most disheartening and most painful thing. And it is largely at the core of that the Communist Party made this call that the president must step down.
Is the ANC self-imploding?
Well, at this point, yes, I think we have been asking for the leadership to provide, particularly President Zuma, to deal with the factions that have been doing wrong things under his name. You could see now the behavior of the ANC Youth League in KwaZulu-Natal, which heckled the Treasurer General of the ANC, which heckled Comrade Pravin Gordhan at an important memorial of East Talandwe, Comrade Ahmed Kathrada, a Rivonia trialist, an outstanding revolutionary. His memory is been stumbled upon by wrong elements. And they do all of this in the name of the president. But because he has been too slow to get off the collective leadership of the ANC, to stamp out factionalism, that faction is now doing as it pleases in their name. And it has reached a situation where it is imploding the movement.
Yeah, just a big and final question, which I think is important to address. Of course, we've got the memorial that's happening today. Not a memorial, but we'll be having a look and seeing those that are gathering to mark the life of Chris Hani. And President Jacob Zuma is going to be the key speaker. We talk about heckling. Is it going to be a behaved audience there today? Do you think politics is going to be drawn into it as the president addresses a lot of SACP members there?
It's a difficult one. We will not allow our members to heckle any speaker on the platform. We'll go there disciplined. As you know, it's a very, very tough one because it has never happened in this form. The president of the ANC is effectively the unifier of all of us. But we've reached a stage where this is not the case. Our intention is that in respect of the family in particular, in respect of the memory of Comrade Chris, it should be a solemn occasion. The government is declaring that a national heritage site, which we're excited about, and I think the family is much more excited about this particular matter. Therefore, we want to be as disciplined as possible and want to call our members to behave themselves, including ANC members, to behave themselves and make sure that we accord Comrade Chris the respect that he deserves.
Solly, we leave it there. Thank you very much for talking to us here on the program. Solly Mapaila, the SACP chair, talking to us here on the program, the second Deputy General Secretary of the SACP. Let us take a break. When we return, we talk downgrades, but we're going to be talking to Business Unity South Africa. Stay tuned.